It's very color coded and organized. It's very Virgo.
I think Maya, you and I are very similar.
Ah, that's funny.
Well,
Looks kind of like, doesn't it?
here's my notes. So if it's any consolation, I'll be the Piscean energy here for this particular topic. So we're talking about the progressed moon. Let's focus on the speed that the progressed moon travels. 2.5 years in a sign, similar to Saturn, about 28-year cycle around. Are there any other major themes or reasons why you all use the progressed moon in your practices?
It seems to me the reason that we're most recently studying this is to be able to identify when somebody's going along in their life doing a certain thing, and then all of a sudden they just make a big change. And I think what we've learned is that having your progressed moon change from one sign to another can be the cause of that.
Yeah. Your natal moon is not a death sentence. You know, you're progressing in your life internally. You're evolving, and so the progressed moon kind of gives you a little bit more flavoring and color.
Because with my Scorpio moon, I tend to think it's never going to get any better. Yeah. So this progressed moon better work.
That's right. That's right. To give you a little more flavor, and to scope out what other chapters of your life are going to feel like. You know, that's how I like to look at it.
Whatever the circumstances are, it has a lot to do with our perceptions and how we react and respond to them. So the circumstances may be one thing, but our take on them and how we deal with them could be entirely different depending on where our progressed moon is at the time.
Because it's like your chart isn't a life sentence. You have these stages of evolution and progressions, you know, through your chart. And so we came up with how you react and respond internally to the circumstances or events in your outer world. You may not be aware of it, but it acts as a filter, sifting through and coloring what comes into your reality. It's your emotional urges. Internally, as your progressed moon transits through the different signs and elements, etc., it activates internal urges, which sort of project onto you like outward circumstances or events, allowing, I guess, the moon to express itself in those signs.
Yeah, and you know, we've been saying that the next sign is the cure for the last sign. And so it could be that whatever trouble you stir up with your progressed moon in one sign, when your progressed moon goes into the next sign, it's going to fix that trouble and come up with a different flavor of trouble.
That's right. a new hell, huh?
And what we're looking for here is the three of us are looking back over the trends in our lives as the moon changed, with the idea that looking forward, as we read our own charts and our clients' charts, we'll be able to say, at this time, it's probable that you will have a change of perspective because your progressed moon is going to go from one sign to another.
Yeah.
So don't be surprised if you just suddenly jump up and start having to travel everywhere when your progressed moon goes into Sagittarius.
Exactly. So forth. I've been assigned the cardinal signs, and so I'll begin with Aries, the fire starter. Cardinal fire. So people can experience during the progressed moon in Aries coming out of Pisces, which is a little more sort of spiritual focus, can be all over the place, and you know, so there's not really a central mode of having assertion over one's life. There can be themes around that, and coming from Pisces. In Aries, you can experience more impulsive, you know, action-oriented, just being more independent or reclaiming independence is sometimes can come up. Personally, I was definitely impatient, impulsive. I had lots of excitement in my life. I joined a paramilitary organization. I had intense physical activity where I was running upwards of 3 to 5 miles a day. I was in the best shape of my life. during that period. Lots of arguments and conflicts emotionally in relationships and partnership in the home. I abruptly ended my going on 5-year relationship at that time. And yeah, so it was it was a period of, I would say, just complete reclaiming who I was, my self-identity through separating from relationship, but just feeling like I was the shit. More so.
Well, I'm a film editor, and you know, I had been doing it a few years when my progressed moon went into Aries, and right around that time, it seems to me within a month of it moving into Aries, I worked on the first season of Arrested Development, and it was a big breakthrough for me. It was a huge change in my career, and up until that time, it had been a real struggle to, you know, make contacts and get work. And after that, it was like a complete shift. It's like something had taken off all of a sudden as a result. And I remember being very driven too to get this job. I thought it was very important, so there was this kind of focus to it. And once I did, and once I worked on it, it changed. You know, like I say, it changed everything. So that's how the progressed moon in Aries affected me. It's sort of as a result of what I did, more so than well, I guess, yeah, I had focus in getting there too.
Yeah. Okay. I did want to, before you go into it, just wanted to add that the cardinal signs, if your natal moon is in a cardinal sign, which is opposing or squaring to the Aries progressed moon, you may have more challenges, you know, through this progressed moon phase. So that's something to note as well. So for example, if your natal moon is in Capricorn, Cancer, you know, so you may have experience more of you know, or even Libra, you know, challenges in that phase.
Well, progressed moon in Aries for me evicted me from my business and kennel situation I had been very devoted to for 10 years and propelled me out into a new and different life.
Does anyone want to add on any themes that the viewers might experience, you know, besides the couple keywords I mentioned?
Definitely.
Conflict, yeah. Just
and self-assertion too.
Yeah.
Being able to stand up for yourself in a way that maybe you never did before. And movement. I think it's really hard to sit still when your progressed moon goes into Aries.
Yeah. Lots of shaking and moving based on the Martian influence, you know.
For life.
That's amazing. So that's some initiative and, you know, something new, kind of fire starting, I would say.
Absolutely started a whole
like
new
emerging.
fire.
It's like you're some part of your personality got to emerge then.
It struck a match on my career, and I always think of it as before and after. That's the before that, and then there's after that in terms of my career.
For Aries, do and don't. Do be active and, you know, exert yourself physically, because you're going to feel that same restlessness and similar feeling in Gemini, and you're going to be rash to make decisions and sort of jump up and go and sort of create new experiences. Do allow yourself to be independent if you're someone that's codependent. Don't get into it with everybody. You know, don't fight. It's not worth it. Don't be argumentative and combative. You know, just take it chill in Aries. All right. So I think Taurus, our first fixed sign.
That's me.
All right.
As a fixed Scorpio moon, I'm very, my sun is in Taurus. I'm very comfortable with the fixed sign. So glad I got assigned that one. You know, it's interesting because Taurus is about what we value, what's important to us, security, our sense of security, ruled by Venus. And so this period of time, I noticed when I look back on my progressed moon in Taurus, the first time I had it is when I got a paper route, started my first jobs. You know, I was 13 years old, and it was a very motivating time for me. The second time, I ended up. Second time I ended up buying my first real estate. I invested in a condo, and was hoping for, you know, okay, I had resisted doing it for a long time. It's really interesting because without knowing astrology, it suddenly became time. I don't know why. You know, I had many years of adulthood and opportunities actually to buy real estate, and it just never happened. And then all of a sudden, I was like, "It's time to get in. The market just keeps going up," and so we did. And I'll share a little bit later when we're in a different progression how it turned out. But you know, there was a big passion for getting it going here.
Yeah, because this one's opposing to your natal moon, correct? Or your
Exactly. Sure. The progressed moon in Taurus is opposite my Scorpio moon, my natal Scorpio moon. What about that? What's the significance of that for you?
for the opposition.
Yeah.
Just experiencing more challenges, you know, like I mentioned earlier with the Aries and the cardinal signs, experiencing the square or the opposition to your natal moon can sort of emphasize more crisis or even highlight some of the good, you know, the positive aspects of it.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll find out later on what happened with it. So for me, if we're not going in any kind of order here, after leaving the Aries component and ending that relationship and just feeling all like, you know, super macho and in shape and all that, I get in the Taurus and I started another serious relationship. I got married. We made long-term plans. We got our first rent-to-own property. So it's kind of exciting. And the property owner at the time taught me about credit and financial planning. She was trying to like save me from myself. In a sense, and I had a really great job toward the end of that progressed moon in Taurus. I remember also going out to eat a lot. So that's what I've got.
Ooh,
You,
okay.
right?
Well, Taurus is about what you own and what you value, right? So the first time, I got with a girlfriend and we bought some land and moved out there and started a women's land community.
Wow.
The second time, by then, I got some new dogs and I had 3 litters of puppies, which has been a part of my life for a long time. That is what I really value, but you want to talk about your resources and what you value. It was definitely an increase in that area for me then.
That's perfect. So the themes around structure and stability and sort of like, you know, having something solid, creating some sort of.
This woman that I'd been with, we've been saying, oh, it would be nice to have women's land and all that kind of stuff. And when that moon went into Taurus, we got a piece of land and we started having women's land events on it.
Nice.
So
that's Venusian.
Materialized what we'd been fantasizing about.
That's quite Venusian. Excellent.
Oh, yes. All those naked women swimming in the pond. Oh, yes.
Perfect.
Before, it was not important to me to stay in one place. So now I'm in Aries, progressed moon goes into Taurus, and now I value being able to stay in one place.
Yeah.
Which I didn't before.
Stability. Okay.
It's interesting. Are you saying that what started in that progressed moon continued on after you left the moon left that sign?
Well, we're getting there. Gemini's next.
Yeah. Same here. At the time, I'll say while it was in Taurus, you couldn't tell me otherwise that this wasn't the perfect plan.
Right.
It's going to last forever.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah.
So our first mutable sign. Will you take us away, Mai?
Right. And the mutable signs, if we're talking about the cardinal signs being the initiator, generator in whatever element it's in, and the fixed sign being the one that concentrates or focuses, then the mutable sign comes along and disperses everything, right? So whatever you just built in a fixed sign, now we're going to come along and dispose of it. And
all right. So do and don't for Taurus.
Well, for Taurus, love what you love, you know, unapologetically, and understand really get clear on what's important to you. And the don't is don't overindulge.
Yeah.
Know when you get to enough. Know when you get to enough.
Yeah, exactly.
Boundaries on your comfort, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The first time, well, the first time my progressed moon went into Gemini was when I was born, so it wasn't actually progressed. That's when it started. The second time, I started moving around and living in my van. Now, before I was into building this community, and I thought, like you did, this was going to be it. And then as soon as that progressed moon went into Gemini, I had to go here and I had to go there. And I just didn't even have a place to live because I was too restless.
Yeah.
And it happened the second time. I guess the second time it happened, I started to be more interested in writing and astrology. Suddenly it was a new phase where all the mental pursuits that previously I was into, just be here now and enjoy how it feels to be out in nature. Now I wanted to go inside and study astrology.
Thanks. Which makes a lot of sense. The whole Gemini air component of information and intellect.
Right.
I guess I'll go next. I, like have a natal moon in Gemini. So for me, this was like my moon in Gemini on steroids. It was like having like ADD, seriously. When it progressed into Gemini, I separated from my wife. I filed for divorce and moved across the country from the DC, Maryland, Virginia area all the way to Minneapolis, Minnesota. I started journaling heavily. I was filling up composition books, like 4 a week, journaling on, and I started studying the African spirituality, like Ifa and different Orisha associations. And so I was just filling up notebooks. My sister and I, which we never really had a close relationship. At the time of my progressed moon in Gemini, we started sort of like speaking all the time, and just being having more of a relationship, getting to know who she was as an adult for the first time. Also, through that move to Minneapolis across the country, relationships with neighbors were really eerie. Like I had a neighbor guy I would park my car in my garage, and 2 minutes later, he'd be like, "Oh, come over and have a drink." It was like having to set up boundaries or establish boundaries with neighbors, which is like a very Gemini thing. I remember like, should I just park around the front of the house so he won't see my car today, and having to dodge this guy. That was totally progressed moon in Gemini. But for sure, the themes associated to being on the phone and communicating, even till today, I feel like my progressed moon conjoining with my natal moon sort of like powered up my natal moon, and now some of those themes continue, especially with having long distance phone relationships with the closest people to me.
Started studying astrology.
Yeah, for the most part. I started an intense study of astrology. Yeah. Definitely. It was obsession.
That was happened to me. It was like, before I had studied it, but then all of a sudden I had to study it, and I had to study it a lot.
Yeah, and that was another thing, filling up those notebooks as well with astrological topics, and just it was insane. It looked crazy to someone from the outside in. What about you, Stephen?
Well, it's interesting as you're talking here, you guys, because I made notes, but one of the things that reminds me of is the underlying things of these events that I wrote down. So, for example, in high school, when I had my first progressed moon in Gemini, I was part of a choir, and I was I was brought into this very special high school choir before anybody else. In ninth grade, nobody allowed ninth graders in, but they allowed me in. And when the progressed moon went into Gemini, I quit. I didn't want to be a part of this group anymore. And I felt.
Are you talking about singing?
Singing, yeah.
That's Taurus.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I just somehow wanted to separate, kind of like you with the neighbors. I felt like constrained, and it was actually also led to spending more time doing film classes and things like that I wanted to really do. So again, with the communications aspect of Gemini, it really began my love of film in high school, and that was in 11th and 12th grade. I ended up, while that was in Gemini there, doing more of the film as a result of quitting the choir. But it wasn't easy. The communications around it wasn't easy, quitting.
Yeah.
And then the second time around, it's funny. As I said, I've been doing a lot of editing work, and I have been. But at that time, when the progressive moon went in Gemini the second time, is when I was trying to get my movie made, my feature film, the first one I wanted to get done. And so I was putting so much energy in that I turned down a whole bunch of editing work. Calls were coming in, and I kept saying no. So there's this theme of like keeping things away or pushing things away in Gemini.
And I think the mercurial nature of discernment, like having to discern what you should be doing, what might occupy more of your time, especially duality in pairs. I notice a lot of things. I also moving into Gemini, Minneapolis. I got a job at the University of Minnesota doing communications. So it was like a whole lot of, mercurial themes there around that. So,
I think it's about focus, because where before in Taurus, I was focused on the puppies and the things that were important to me. And then all of a sudden, when it went into Gemini, that wasn't important anymore. It was more important for me to be able to move around. I moved to Seattle and back to Oklahoma and to Chicago and back to Oklahoma and back to Seattle.
Yeah.
All in a very short period of time.
I'm glad you said that, being able to move. I love that. To kind of round off, I also started a relationship and stopped it within 3 months. It was very easy to go, nah, I don't want this right now. It was easier during Moon in Gemini, for sure. For Mai, what do you have for us? Do and don't.
Oh, this sounds like a repeat of Sagittarius. You're going to be very restless. And so don't think that you're going to be able to stay in one place during this time, because movement is everything, I think, in Gemini. And also, the emphasis will be on words, and everything will become very verbal. But that doesn't mean that those words necessarily mean anything in Gemini. You can come up with a whole lot of words, but it doesn't necessarily, you don't have to sign yourself off on that. Because with Gemini, it's always going to be the opposite or something else next, whatever you think it is.
And I can say with conviction, as you and I share a Gemini moon, Mai, do write letters to yourself, past, present, and future, if you can.
Yeah.
Cardinal, now we get into Cancer, and things sort of calm down. Finally, after all of that, practicing no in Gemini. I moved looking for home and nurturing several times during this period. Nesting was a big thing. I remember just feeling like I need to find home. I need to find the next home. Moving from Minneapolis to Portland, to Vancouver, Washington, and moving several times while in Vancouver, and and then eventually thinking like, oh, this is the place, and this is exactly where I need to be, and this is where I'm going to stay. I also became obsessed with, those magazines, those housing magazines, where they have like luxury homes and all that. I remember during that period looking at all the luxury homes in the Seattle and Washington, state area, and just being obsessed with that, and the tiny house thing that was all on Netflix for a while. And just sort of thinking about what family was too, and real estate, property. I know that you mentioned some Taurus themes related to buying a home and stuff, but when we think about once you buy it, now does it feel like home? To me, that's Cancer. Does the feeling of this place make me feel as though this is where home is? It's this family. And so I went searching, looking, digging, feeling for that. At the same time, Uranus was transiting my 4th house, which still is, and I've moved over 13 times. And so during that progressed moon, I think I was at like move number 9, and so I kept thinking, oh, this is the place. No, this is going to be the place. And I would move to the next place thinking this is going to be home, and I'm going to start a family. and it did not happen.
Mm.
So, what does family look like versus the family that I had been conditioned through, childhood and all that? I had a lot of contrast with that going on. What about you guys?
Well, I had a pretty intense experience when my progressed moon went in Cancer the first time. Just got into college, and I had a bad accident where I lost part of my finger, and a door was slammed. It was in a fight with somebody, and what was up for me there, and I only realized it later, was that I had been away from home for the first time, and I'd lived a pretty protected life and with a pretty codependent relationship with my family. And now I was out on my own, and I had to sort of struggle to deal with what it was like to, relate to others that were treating me as an adult instead of, a protected sort of like child of a family, of a mother or whatever. And so it was a complete wake-up call in terms of how I'm going to relate, what I consider home, what I consider family. In a space with two roommates, a very small room, this kind of stuff. So a lot of Cancerian themes were up for me. Like I said, unaware, unconsciously, really, for me at that time. I never would have associated that accident with it, but it seems like it is.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. How about you, Mai?
Well, the first time my progressed moon went into Cancer, this is when, as a little child, we moved from my childhood home in Colorado to Wichita, Kansas. And I can remember just being distraught because I felt I had lost my home. Of course, we got a new home. It was all about nesting and all of that. But the change of home at that time was really disturbing. The second time, this is when I was just coming out of that Gemini period of moving to Seattle, living in my van, living all over the place. And I moved into a place at the river bottom where, again, I started having and breeding dogs and acted like I was settling down and I was going to be there for a long time. And that's what I thought was going to happen.
Wow.
And the same thing the third time. The third time it happened, I was more in a settled situation. But again, I started thinking about wanting to be able to breed my dogs.
Yeah. That's interesting. I know for me, another thing that came up was my mom living in Africa and wanting to, at the time, go back to Liberia and visit. It was like a very strong theme, and this is during a time when it was not safe to go to that country, and I just wanted to go so badly. And so I think themes around the mother are pretty, strong or prominent for some people during the progressed moon in Cancer. It can come up, any issues or even resolving issues around the mother. Mai, would you like to expand on some more Cancerian progressed moon themes?
Well, the only thing I can think of really is that in 81, that's when I did settle down and have a home and stay in one place and start to identify with being in that place. And having a local community and settling into thinking that was going to be ongoing in my future. But it turned out later it wasn't. But at that point in time, I really thought I was settling into something permanent.
Whereas before you'd mentioned that you could live on the road and you just, the
I
Gemini moon. Yeah.
And I mean, having a Gemini moon, I knew that I was just too restless to stay in any one place.
I would say do feel home in your body. Feel the idea of where you go, there you are. Don't look for the family that you never had that you want to create if you don't identify with it at a soul level. So listen to what family is for you. Do figure out what it means to nest within your own self. Take up yoga, take up movement in your body before you look for moving into and creating a home with something that isn't yours, or never really belonged to you. And for my favorite poem by Warsanshire, don't make homes out of human beings. You know? So, all right.
Leo, another fixed sign. I'm at home there. Yes, Leo is about, putting ourselves out there, right? Like it or not, in the world. And I tend to be a very private person, and I got a stellium in the 12th house, Pluto and Uranus and Mars. So I tend to be very, that's, I don't want to put it out there too much. I have fantasies about it, but when it actually comes to it,
it feels,
maybe not, because you're going to judge me, and then I'm not going to really, like that. That's my perspective on things. But, there it is. The progressive moon in Leo shows up, and, that's when I made my first films in college, and also went through a period of deep depression. And, looking back, I wonder if it was because Leo was trying to call me out, and I was like, not comfortable being seen, and coming out, as they say, literally coming out. So it was very, very tough time for me. But one of the things that did happen in that same period in college is I noticed when I was a film student that a student who was a year older than I was appeared on the front page of the school newspaper as having won a national student editing competition from Hollywood, a Hollywood editing competition. So I decided, okay, I want to enter that thing and win next year.
Yeah.
And I actually did. And a year later, when the progressive moon was still in Leo, and I was nominated, and they flew me out to California, and I got to be part of this awards ceremony and meet all these famous people. It was actually quite amazing. Really, really looking at these progressions, it's crazy how it fits. The other thing I was going to share, the follow-up to the condo thing, which is interesting. I didn't really make the connection initially, but this is when the condo that we bought, we realized it really wasn't working out. We had a nightmare neighbor who was constantly causing problems and all this stuff. And we just decided, that's it, we're done, we're out of here. And what I noticed was that this is the square. This is the square to Taurus. And, Taurus is where it all got going. And now we're in the square of Leo. And I'm realizing, I'm better than this. And I shouldn't be a part of this. Not better, but, it's like, I don't need to be a part of this crazy situation. And, Leo being, really deserving better, we just decided we're out of here. So it was just an interesting turn of events that I wouldn't have expected again from Leo necessarily.
Yeah. Okay. So for me, the first time, I'm excited because this is my first time I get two perspectives of the progressive moon in Leo twice. In 1990, I was 3 years old, and the war in Liberia started in 1989, Christmas Eve, and we fled the country to the DC area where I kind of grew up for the most part. And so that was my first exposure to the progressive moon in Leo at that time. The second time around, I'm currently in the thick of it. 2017 is when I entered the second one, and I started a whole lot of creative projects, including an animated astrological book, starting this YouTube channel, and I picked up a guitar again. I did do a whole lot of overspending, a little bit of gambling. Gambling as far as like risky stock investments, and gambling on things as far as investing in people and their desires and wishes and hopes. I also had this big thing with my hair. When the progressive moon entered Leo into the first ingress, I really wanted dreadlocks badly. And so all these different hair products, it was a thing. Like the bathroom counter was covered in hair products that I was trying out different things. And finally I would cut it and then let it grow and cut it. I went back and forth. I played around with wanting to color it. I bought a luxury sedan during this period. Lots of big ticket and like flashy jewelry things, like yellow sapphire diamond rings and ruby rings. That's kind of Leo energy. It's like wanting the finer, flashy, more extravagant things in life. And I went from having like 3 pairs of tennis shoes to now like 20 something pairs, all in this progressive moon in Leo time. Just, having a desire for it, or an urge, where normally that wouldn't be my thing. So definitely themes around that.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Florence?
Well, interestingly enough, the first time was when my sister was born. So that would make sense that I had been the child, and now I have to develop an ego in separation to realize who I actually am, because I am not the only child. The second time, that's when I became totally obsessed with photography and videography. And I went to Oklahoma University, and the art school there had just opened up a video program, and I went over there and couldn't get enough. I'd studied film before. I'd been a photographer since I was 5, but now it was all I could do. And then again, I went to Tulsa University within this time period and had another great video obsession where every Friday I'd check the cameras out and shoot all weekend long, not sleep at all, come in on Monday, turn the cameras in, go into the editing room, edit until Thursday, take the cameras out. And I did that for about 1.5 years. That's just about all I did.
Nice.
And then the third time, what happened was, I would say the third time I became interested in being more self-expressive in public.
Yeah.
I became more social than I had been previously, and that I'm normally inclined to do.
Yeah. As we
And
sort
I have
of
a relationship with the Leo.
oh yeah. As we sort of talked about in our little in our initial recap of the signs, we talked about confidence and self-confidence and self-worth more so, and whatever it is you're attached to, whether it's material things or emotional or whatever, or even people, there is some component of self-worth that will come, that can potentially come to the surface, I believe, during a progressed moon in Leo. However you're feeling around your issues of self-worth will come out in the ways in which you either show off yourself, show off your significant other,
Right.
show off your things.
Self-expression.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm much more able to be self-expressive when I have emphasis in Leo than I am at any other time.
All right, so do and don't, Stephen. Leo.
Yeah, Leo. Well, do trust yourself that your impulse to shine forth is a good one, and don't give into your insecurities and your feeling like you don't belong or you don't have anything worthwhile to say.
I like that. And if I might add, don't buy luxury things if it's not really you, if you don't really like it.
Oh
You'll
yeah.
you'll regret your purchases later.
For me, Virgo is one of those more elusive signs that I don't always quite understand and feel like I'm having an experience of that I can define. It's an earth sign. I don't have a lot of earth signs in my chart, so it's a little unfamiliar to me. And the first time, this is about the time that I got selected to go into a special education program in Wichita, Kansas, as a little kid. And so that was about starting to apply myself in a more focused and detailed way to studying and learning at school. I would say both the second time and the third time both, I got into gardening. Both of the places that I lived at that time, it became very important to me to go out and dig in the yard, which I had never done before. Just came over me. That's what I needed to do. And I would say that is an urge of progressed moon in Virgo. To connect with Earth.
Hands in the earth.
Yeah.
Right. And just sustaining and growing your own food, vegetation and Virgo. I think about like holistic gardening, whole foods, co-ops and such, like, things like that. For me, the first time around, was about 6 years old. And that's when I first had my first bout of extreme digestive issues related to starch intake. Like coming in an African household, you eat rice for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And not like a small quantity. It's like rice with rice with rice, you know? And I just wasn't drinking enough water. And it just, you know, so health issues, which later, you know, came to the surface were resulting from these issues during the first Virgo moon. But it's progressively, you know, I wish someone had taken care of it earlier on, because as I got older, I continued the same health issues with my digestive system in Virgo. Going into it next. And so as a result of me knowing that this period is coming and health issues will potentially come to the rise again, I'm trying to tackle my health. So I went and did one of those like 23andMe things. I did the health insights, and I found out I have like celiac trait, you know, and different things. And so cutting back on gluten, cutting back on like, you know, starches and any kind of really processed foods is what my goal is as I progress into Virgo. I'm expecting work and productivity and all my creative stuff to really pick off now. And I can, like I said, practically apply whatever the creative efforts into something tangible.
Yeah.
So how about you, Stephen?
My brain is exploding. My Virgo stuff that I've got is just beyond imagination. I graduated college. I got my first feature film job, just walking into a door somewhere and saying who I was. And somebody hired me in New York City to work on a Tom Selleck movie, 3 Men and a Baby. I was the only production assistant that got a credit, and it was just randomly meeting a person. 28 years later, I met the production manager on that show. 28 years later, on my second progressed moon in Virgo, that same production manager, that was the only time I worked with that production manager whose office I walked into and got that job as a PA, office PA. 28 years later, I was working with a director in Hollywood who was working with that same guy who I'd never worked with since. And now I'm an editor, and I'm editing this guy's pilot with this other guy producing. And he was like, wow, it was like 28 years, the progressed moon.
The full circle, yeah.
And I came back with the same producer guy.
That's
In a completely different setting, completely quote unquote randomly. But there's all kinds of work I did, new editing opportunities out of college. I also experienced a collapsed lung twice.
Yeah, health, yeah.
Absolutely. Who knew? But this was happening in first Virgo turnaround, in my first Virgo progressive moon.
And again, before I knew anything about astrology, you know, there's no way I could have predicted this. And then when I finally did a couple of years later, moved to LA, all within this same period, this first progressive moon in Virgo, I started, everybody started coming at me with vegetarianism and, you know, you shouldn't eat meat and this and all that stuff. Everybody, I mean, you know, sure, it's LA, you know, but that's where I was, and that's what everybody was telling me, all these new diets that I needed to try.
Yeah. That's really cool.
Yeah. There's a lot of firsts for work for me. Interesting.
This, for me, another thing I noted during the first time around at age 6, my brother went off to college, and he was like my best friend, like the father figure to me. So I thought that was kind of interesting in relation to when we talked about earlier some of the health issues coming up as a result of other underlying issues. So I was thinking this might have been related to me feeling that like sort of sense of loss or separation, some of the health issues coming up at that time. And I think you may have mentioned something, Stephen, in relation to you overworking and some of your health issues with your lungs, you know.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was working very, very hard, you know, and all of a sudden, this lung issue came up. And so perhaps if you work too hard in the Virgo period, you know, you'll pay the price. I don't know.
I think any health issues, really, that's why I kind of I say the progressed moon in Virgo is a time for people to get checked, you know, get tests, get checks, and make sure you're focusing on your health issues and not ignoring anything, especially. All right. So
for me, another thing that happened when my progressed moon went into Virgo, that's when I graduated from Tulsa. University, moved from Oklahoma, went to Berkeley, got a job at Palmer's Camera Store, lived in a warehouse studio with 3 other photographers. We had a darkroom in the basement. And so it became a time where I was majorly working as a photographer. I was in the daytime working in a photography shop, and then in the evenings, I'm out shooting and developing my film. And that was it. That's all I cared to do.
Virgo, do and don't.
Mm-hmm. Well, the same kind of thing about the details. Virgo can get so concerned about the details that they feel like that is the most important thing. And that if you aren't paying attention to their details that they think are important, that you are a bad person. And so, you know, it's good to be able to know the details, to be able to do the steps in the right order, but it's not everything. And go dig in the yard.
Hey, that's right. Maybe eat something healthy, right?
Eat
All
what
right.
you grow. Grow what you eat.
Yeah. All right. So Libra's themes are relationship, harmony, balance, justice, fairness, beauty, aesthetic, fashion, all that, you know, lovely Venusian themed things. Also poetry. And I like to think of it as the chords or the strumming of a guitar, the instrumental rather. Um, this is where I started to care about how other people perceive me. Around age 8, my mom was like putting me in itchy corduroys and turtlenecks, and I, sewing clothing for me with different prints that matched my siblings, and I just did not want. I wanted my own identity, so I started sneaking clothes in my backpack and changing at school during this period. I'm just wanting my own sort of fashion, stepping into a style of my own. I would say that's all I can really recall from that period. I'm sure you all have some interesting, Libra themes for us.
I had been working, producing photography. I had these obsessions of things like the classical Greek gods and goddesses, and I would bring people over to the studio and set them up in the position of the 3 graces and shoot them over and over. And then I suddenly became involved in the San Francisco art scene with my photography. And so it was much more social. There was a lot more dressing up and going out. And I got published in a few different photography books, both as a portrait of myself, and also some of my photography got published. And I had some photographs that were in some photography shows at that time. So it was fantastic. I like Progress Moon in Libra. Makes me much more social than I am at any other time.
Well, I had an interesting experience. It has to do more with the justice and fairness aspect of Libra. Continuing on my saga of being an editor and the journey, which is apparently a theme that my shares are taking on. I had when I first moved to LA, I had an offer to work on a gigantic movie again, this time in post-production, which is where I ultimately was going to end up. And it was through a connection that I had. And I had asked around about this person that was looking to hire me, and found out that he was pretty tyrannical. Like, he would pretty mean in the editing room, and treated people very badly. And at the time, I wanted to be an actor and try some different things. And so, much to the dismay of a lot of my friends and family, I turned down the opportunity. I really see it as looking back, I see it as a reflection of my, feeling like I didn't like being around somebody who didn't treat people fairly, and who was this kind of person. So I stayed away from it. Second time around, it involved my mother. Yeah, I had a real difficult time with her, and it was very tough. So I had to take a break from talking to her. And again, it feels like the same theme, around what's fair and right in relationship. And so that's the second time around. And I also had some tough times on some work experiences as well. So I don't know. It's interesting that it would have taken on a negative quality. I'm trying to think if it relates to in opposition to my Mercury or something like that, or I don't know. Interesting.
I think Libra becomes aware of things being out of balance, and is more concerned with getting that balance back.
Yeah, interesting.
A more weighted resolve, rather, of what's going on what side of the scale at what time, and who's getting more of
Mhm.
whatever. Libra, do allow yourself to love and relate to another person. Um, do experience the beauty of just being in relationship and partnership, and and write some poetry. Play your guitar, listen to your Nina Simone. I'm not going to say her name, Alexa, because she'll talk back to me, but tell her what you want to hear, you know. And don't get so caught up on things being fair, and what is fair and what is not fair, because that iron fist in the velvet glove is always going to find something that's not quite right or not fair in their own eyes, and so what may be measuring today is you're not going to give a crap about it, tomorrow. So don't get so caught up on that fairness.
I have a little bit of Scorpio, but it is really one of the most difficult signs to understand.
Yeah. Well, it's true. I mean, I knew an astrologer who said, "Oh, you have your moon in Scorpio. Who's your therapist?"
Sounds about right. And who's your therapist?
All right, right, exactly. So, on that, yeah, Scorpio is about the things we don't normally talk about. The things that we don't want to deal with: sex, and other people's money, contracts, death, and sure enough, that's the stuff that really fascinates me throughout my life, and also vexes me because I've got Neptune right there with my moon in Scorpio. So there's a lot of just not feeling great about this, and confusion around what's really going on, what are people's motivations, and what do I really feel. So yeah, the first time that the progressed moon was in Scorpio, is the first time I moved out on my own. I mean, I was in LA and I had roommates all the time, and I actually started managing an apartment building, which is about helping other people's money, helping the owner of the building rent out the apartments and stuff like that. And it made it possible for me to really free up around dating and sex and all that stuff, because I was very self-conscious at that time about dating, and I hadn't come out yet to friends and family and things like that. So it was nice to just be on my own. So it really feels like a scorpionic theme in that sense. And it also began a cycle of my editing career really taking off. I joined a union, and that was great. And I also reunited with my father, who had been out of my life my whole life. So that was an amazing time as well. And really calling up a lot of the kind of the belief systems that I had developed over the years, and really having them kind of air out and change my perspective based on reuniting with him and actually hearing from him what his experience of my childhood was like. And yeah, and then the second time the progressed moon was in Scorpio was just a couple of years ago. Oh no, I'm in it right now actually. I started studying astrology. So really that's an incredible explosion. And also there were other factors too. Uranus transited my natal Mercury, and it just set off. It was like a firecracker. So yeah, that's how it all has played out in my life.
Yeah. So kind of the occult shadow side, the psyche, exploration through psychoanalysis and different themes like that can come up for people.
My primary interest in astrology is the psychological and the that side of things, more esoteric side of astrology, where I can really help people, and find out what's really underneath their surface and help them bring it up and deal with their shadow side, the Jungian stuff, yeah.
Yeah, and Sigmund Freud, some of the works there. I think this is interesting. I think the progressed moon is a great place to do some of that work as well, and see how people are, evolving in different chapters of their life emotionally.
And by the way, I'm sorry to interrupt you. By the way, it's been actually an emotionally tough time. The whole time the progressed moon has been in Scorpio, I've been dealing with just massive emotions, up and down, roller coaster, crazy time. So that's another component as well for me. And that kind of manifesting in my life.
Yeah. Purification through Scorpio. What's interesting is any client of mine that's in a progressed Scorpio phase, it's not just challenging, but they're in a hell or a darkness that other people can't even imagine. And so pulling out pulling them into a place of just kind of normalcy and emotionally is the hardest thing, just to get them sort of to the surface. They're so far deep into there's a lot of guilt tripping a lot of times associated with it. And sometimes sometimes I've seen it bordering paranoia too. When progressed moon is in Scorpio, or people are just kind of feeling like, things are out, not just out to get them, but um, nothing can go their way, or because of, they're sort of a doomed air to things sometimes. That's when it's expressing itself in the lowest. But through it, Scorpio rules power, and personal power over your life. And so for me, the first time around, I was about 10, and I recall this period being a complete blur. But my older sister went off to college, and so that left me in the house alone. My mom was working 3 jobs. I was always alone at home. And so I remember just feeling isolation. And the one thing I recall from this entire period, that 2.5-year period, was being Leonardo the Ninja Turtle 2 years in a row for Halloween. And that was just a Halloween costume. That's when I look back in pictures and stuff and thinking of it. Whatever that means, I guess it'll come back to me in the next progressed moon in Scorpio. Maybe I'll be wearing an adult Ninja Turtle costume. All right, what do you have for us, Mike?
Let's see, we're Scorpio now?
Yeah.
Well, oddly enough, in my life, all 3 times my progressed moon went into Scorpio, one of the big themes was moving. The first time, it was as a child. I'd been living in Wichita, Kansas happily for a number of years and thought that was how life was going to be. And my parents moved me to California, which was very different. And just about the time I got settled into that, they moved us back to Tulsa, Oklahoma. So, that felt at the time like a kind of a death of a life to me. And also, I guess it had to do with other people's money, because my life was dependent on what other people were doing with their money, my parents at that time. This is when my mother died.
Oh, wow, death.
Right at the time that my progressed moon went into Scorpio, my mother died.
Mm.
And I got some money from that, other people's money. And so I bought the kennel with some other people. And then the third time, it's where I am now, and my 15-year-old dog just died. So definitely having to do with death. And also, again, living in somebody else's house, depending on somebody else's money. She's renting me this house, and then maybe she got into financial trouble and she thought about having to sell the house. And so, again, I'm dependent on what's happening with somebody else's money. Fortunately, she worked it out, so I'm still able to stay here. But this is where I am right now, is Moon in Scorpio.
The heavy time. I would say for the viewers, one positive thing that can come from this period is if you're into any sort of genealogy research into your family history, progressed moon in Scorpio gives you this ability to research deep topics and, maybe have the more, I would say, focus to investigate things that
And you can talk about the hidden information being revealed too.
Definitely. So that's one way to use the energy. If you're looking at active astrology and exercising symbols and all that stuff, using the moon for the power that it holds during that progressed moon phase, I would say.
Mm.
So it doesn't use you.
Yeah.
That's right.
All right.
Take charge of the energy.
There you go. What about you, Stephen? Scorpio, right? Do or don't?
Well, do get grounded. Do hug a tree. Do stand with your feet in the dirt. Do ask other people their opinion of what you're thinking, and get in reality. And that's kind of the don't. Don't make up crap about what other people think and who you are and what it all means, because
you're usually wrong.
All right, Mai, will you take us away with Sagittarius?
Hey, here we go. This is the mutable of the fire signs, right? So we always think of the mutable sign as being something that's changing to another form and dissolving whatever is there. So, of course, when the moon goes into Sagittarius, I have to travel. That's when I took a lot of different trips around the Southwest, Death Valley. And the other thing I started to do was search and rescue, which was interesting. So I'm doing a lot of hiking in nature with my dogs and learning a lot of skills for how to find lost hikers and save people and CPR and all of that kind of stuff. So it was rather intense study time as well.
Nice. Okay. Stephen, you want to give us some insight on the Sagittarius?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm looking at all the events I wrote down, and I'm trying to see. I mean, basically, it comes to coming out, and coming onto my own, coming into my own. So I suppose it comes more in the learning aspect. You know, it really freed me up to start. You know, all the, you know, the fuel for these difficulties I had in my life. It was a real dark night of the soul, dating somebody, and I realized how affected I was by my parental influence and how I was attracting people to me that were, you know, were helping me play out these unhealthy comfortable dynamics and relationship. And all of this was fuel for me to do a lot of studying and a lot of going to temples and exploring my spirituality. You know, again, like I was saying, I'm in LA, so there's all kinds of places you can go and explore. And I did a lot of that in this period of time here. And so I would say that's probably the primary expression. Also so happens there was a big earthquake in 94. And I don't know what that has to do with the progressed moon in Sagittarius, but it kind of shook me up and made me question a lot of things. So who knows?
Yeah. So Sagittarian themes around philosophy, expansion, travel,
Yeah.
Religion, and ceremonies. For me, we relocated to a new home, changed schools, which was like a foreign world to me. I started taking French, and what's interesting is that everyone in my family spoke French except for me fluently at the time. But my mom was picking my electives and forced me to take French to sort of catch up with the family. My mother traveled back to Africa briefly for the first time since the war in 1989 to research for her thesis. So my mother has a natal moon in Sagittarius, and so there was a separation or a long distance of the mother, I guess, our relationship and her experience of going back home to what is foreign to me, but should be home to me. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But yeah, so as far as other Sagittarian themes for our viewers, Sagittarius also rules sport. And so sport in the sense of...
I started doing dog agility.
There you go.
That became my sport. And the other thing that happened was I got a job as the photographer for Expressions magazine. So
Nice.
I was getting published as a photographer a lot during that time.
Yeah, ninth house publication, Sagittarian publication. Cool. Any other themes that people might experience with? I know you'll feel a little more jovial. I mean, coming out of Scorpio, my God, it's like a sigh of relief, you know. Progressive.
I'm looking forward to my progressed moon in the Sagittarius in about a year. What time is it now?
Yo, you just sit and rock in the corner until it gets there. You'll be fine. No, seriously, just a little more lighthearted and jovial in spirit and nature, feeling more optimistic and able to see above the trenches of, you know, the pit of the sewer that Scorpio can sometimes feel like. A lot of people end up finally traveling. I pulled up the charts of two clients that have this placement, and they both traveled, whether it was domestic or international, during the progressed moon in Sagittarius. some major travel and exploration. So yeah. Sagittarius, do and don't.
This is a do and a don't. Don't resist the urge to travel because you're probably going to have to. So
That's for sure.
what's happening in your life, be ready to let go of it and be much more able to move around than previously, because Sagittarius is going to give you this restlessness that if you try to fight, it's going to be bad.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So we're going to go into Capricorn. Ooh. We're currently in Capricorn season. So this is interesting. For me, this was a great turning point. This is when I got my first taste of adulting, around age 14. Got my first job at a luxury sort of nursing home. It was like one of those lifestyles of the rich and famous. These people had money, and the nursing home, the facilities looked like a college campus. It wasn't like a regular facility. And I worked in the dining hall there. And by the age of 16, in this progression, I was working 2 jobs. During my summer break or spring break, I had a job at IHOP as a server, and I was working at the dining facility at the nursing home still through high school. And I was paying for my own bills, my car insurance. I had a prepaid cell phone. Ooh, you couldn't tell me anything. And I made sure no one called me outside of nights and weekends because it was free.
Right.
So, it was like, I just felt like I'd arrived. I felt like I didn't want to listen to anyone because I'm going to work and I'm paying bills. So that was my experience. How about you all?
One of the things I have written down here is a cell phone. It's so funny.
Yeah, you feel like I'm somebody.
Right. Wow.
What about you, Mai?
Well, the first time, this is when I moved out of my parents' house. I went to Oklahoma City from Tulsa to swim for a coach that had taken other swimmers to nationals. And so I was at the point in my life where I would either make my career as a swimmer on the national scene or I wouldn't. So I was ambitious to have a career as a swimmer, which didn't work out. But I then ended up not going home, but instead going to college the first time. The second time, I ended up again going to school, going to the Assistance Dog Institute to learn, and become a teacher in service dog training. So apparently when Moon goes into Capricorn, I become ambitious and serious about my career. And coming out of that, I put together the first nonprofit organization around the service dogs and service dog training.
Themes around status and reputation, and really kind of feeling being taken seriously in your field.
Mm-hmm.
Taking myself seriously too, which I've never really mattered before.
Yeah, now that's Capricorn. If you want to take yourself seriously, let your progressive moon go into Capricorn.
Yep.
And you'll have dry humor. All right. What about you, Stephen? You said a cell phone and other themes?
Well, it was interesting because, right around the time that my first adult progressed moon in Capricorn came around, that's when cell phones were really a thing. And, I remember I took this self-help kind of weekend course at the time, and I was wanting to get out of my own way so that I could stop pussyfooting around and maybe really get focused on my career. And somebody suggested this course. And so out of that, I said, I'm going to get a job that's going to pay me, a creative job that's going to pay me, that's going to be, something I'm passionate about. I'm going to get a cell phone and I'm going to get an assistant. I just called it. I just, that's what I'm going to get. Having no idea again that this was a Capricorn period in my life, but that's very Capricorn themes, right? So, and sure enough, within a few months, I had gotten the call that I was being promoted from an assistant editor on the TV show Clueless. It was my first job as an editor because I got promoted. And then that same week, a cell phone arrived in the mail, and in one fell swoop, I also got an assistant because every editor gets an assistant.
Wow.
There you go. So it's you commanded that into your experience.
Yeah, so you have more powerful ability to manifest, apparently,
And
Aquarius.
in Capricorn,
Well, yeah.
do you think that might be related to your natal Virgo planets and the trine? Because you said you have a stellium in Virgo.
Yes, very good question. There's a strong influence there. I think you're right with the Earth signs happening. For
So
sure.
for some of the viewers, I think about Capricorn. If you look at the structure of the fourth house of Cancer and the 10th house of Capricorn, and you think about just playing dress up and putting on a tie and feeling like you're, someone important. Capricorn can bring that producing, it's cardinal earth. And so it's the ability to produce that feeling of importance, and it can materialize because Capricorn walks the walk and talks the talk, that's really cool. Is themes around emotions. I wanted to kind of touch on that, what people might experience emotionally during the progressed moon in Capricorn. If you are not in a place where you feel important or ambitious or are pursuing ambitious matters, how might someone, be experiencing this progressed moon period? If you're a slouch, for example.
A bit of a struggle, you kind of come to terms with like, wow, I really haven't been living my passion, and what am I going to do about that? We've got this in just a few days now. We've got this, or 2 weeks, we got the Saturn-Pluto conjunction in Capricorn, and that's really going to be up for all of us, But I know we're talking about progressed moon now, but everybody's really talking about that as well. Now the Capricorn theme of like, if you're not on track, you're going to feel it.
Right. Weight. It's very heavy, and it has to do with your material reality about being responsible for supporting yourself, and whether you have or not. And I think the weight of Capricorn's lesson is about, it's time to take responsibility and support yourself if you haven't been.
Yeah, definitely. Capricorn doesn't prefer the shortcuts or a handout. And so people might experience those sort of themes around, am I a slouch that people are taking care of, or am I actually having sort of agency or governance over my own affairs? All right. I would say do allow yourself to mature and feel like fine wine and be refined and work and all that. But don't get so caught up on the identity of status. You haven't arrived just yet, especially if this is your first time around. Where you're going is so far from where you think you are now. I would say don't get caught up in and being so productive that you end up producing nothing that matters when the progressed moon goes through different sides. Don't get so caught up in being productive and fixed on that one thing that you have to produce or create that you forget, what really matters.
Right. Yeah, we're on our last fixed sign here, and this one's really about community, spiritual community, our friends, our family, our greater work in the world, and how we work together. And for me, this one was very. Anybody else want to add any other descriptions to the Aquarius theme?
Definitely humanitarian and social groups. As you mentioned. I think about it as having this sort of like fixed identity of or fixed perspective rather on things. You sort of get really focused on certain perspectives and ideals, I would say.
Okay, yeah. I had a couple of cool things that happened during my progressed moon in Aquarius. Number one is I was born with the name Stephen Sprung, but when I was a child, my mother married another man, my stepfather, and she gave me his name, and which I carried with me through my whole early adult life until the progressed moon in Aquarius. In which point, I was telling a friend of mine that I really miss that name, and I feel so myself when I have that name, Sprung. And he said, well, change it. And I said, yeah, but how are people going to know who I am? They already know me this way. He said, it doesn't matter. People get married, women get married, they change their names. So I went ahead and changed it. And I really, looking at my notes, I realized this is me connecting back to my tribe. This is connecting back to my greater tribe, my ancestry. I mean, talk about a community, talk about, our spiritual home, our community. And it's funny, at the same time, I worked on a TV show as an editor called Together. The name of the show was called Together. I was like, oh, you got to be kidding, you can't make this stuff up. Looking back, it's like, wow. And also I took a spiritual initiation with a spiritual group in LA. And I took an initiation, and I, got given these practices, these spiritual practices, and really that was huge. It made me a part of a greater community, a real spiritual community, and in another kind of a whole other level. And so that was another way that it manifested, that the progressed moon in Aquarius manifested in my life.
For me, I definitely became very eccentric. This is the second half of high school now, or 16, the last tail end. And I developed this obsession with Macy Gray, the singer. I was like, very strange kind of behavior, and then rebellious in nature. I had 3 cars totaled in that period. I joined the Air Force against my mom's wishes. Like, I just kind of was like, went to MEPS, signed up, and was gone within a couple months. And I just wanted to get far away. So that whole freedom and desire for liberation. Aquarius doesn't like to feel boxed in. And I also kind of think, when I think of Aquarius, I think of, if there's a button here and you put a sign that says do not press, Aquarius is going to press it before you walk away, just because you said do not press. And so anyone that tried to tell me anything during that period, I kind of just did the opposite, because I know that I went through that rebellion. And most teenagers are, but I just noticed it more so being very eccentric in my, coming from this sort of conservative Catholic background, and just getting into different things. So, all right. What about you, Mike?
So I went to school and grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, in a conservative family without much exposure to anything outside of that. And when my progressed moon went into Aquarius, I, with friends, started the Gay and Lesbian Alliance in Norman, Oklahoma, at Oklahoma University.
Wow.
So at that point, I suddenly became the acting out of the eccentric and let's say unusual from the perspective of where my family had been coming from, and concerned with larger organizations and the greater good and social justice and all of that. That was the first time. And then the second time was when I really started to develop that nonprofit organization for education and support of animal-assisted living, and a therapy program, and I really concentrated on expanding that and connecting with the national organization, and really starting to identify as being part of a charitable organization.
Nice. Yeah. So, and lots of involvement in groups and being social, for sure, with Aquarius.
Yeah.
As the polarity is Leo, I find Aquarius to be popular in their uniqueness, whereas Leo is more popular with the flashy, sort of showy component of here I am. Aquarius is like, I don't really care if you notice, but they are noticeable, in my opinion.
The ego isn't there so much.
Yeah. Well, Stephen, for you, what would you tell people do and don't for Aquarius?
I would say for Aquarius, do open yourself up to the contribution of others. Allow them to contribute to you, and don't get stuck in the small details and the petty personality differences between the people that you're with.
Oh, Pisces. Once again, everything dissolves, and now this is in water, so it's all on a emotional subterranean level. Everything dissolves and becomes unclear, right? The first time, now, I faced some persecution by local authorities for having been a radical activist. And so I had to change where I was living and how I was living. So that previous thing that I thought was my life dissolved. And then it happened again the next time, where the kennel, the nonprofit organization, the thing that I had spent 10 years in Capricorn building and then Aquarius expanding, completely dissolved. And I was back to no identity, not knowing who I was or where I was going to go or what I was going to do. And then starting over again. Pisces took it all away.
Escapism was one keyword that came up when you mentioned having to leave where you were living based on persecution by, the community or even authority, rather. I see in themes for viewers, this is where you can get really tripped out into your spirituality, or you can become a mess of a person. You can dissolve into the mush and, start just let things go, let yourself go. Sometimes I've seen that. For me, it was a hot mess period. I'm in the Air Force, and we're drinking heavy and trying to get back on base sober so we didn't get caught and get kicked out of the military. That was like a recurring theme every week, at least 3 times a week in the strip club, just acting a fool, and also at the ingress of the progressed moon in Pisces, I am in basic military training. And at the time, I used to wear religious medallions like a cross and some other saint that my mom had us wear. And I remember the training instructor was a Jewish person. And they looked at the religious medallions as it fell out of my shirt one day. We were recovering from the push-up position. And they went, "You're only allowed one ornament, trainee," And I remember them snatching the necklace off of my neck. And I remember thinking, like, looking at them like, oh, they're going to hell. Just this like extreme feeling of this is the way things should be spiritually, just so invested in a certain way. And looking back, I wouldn't care, today, if that same situation were to happen. That wouldn't be my belief. So I think we sort of like hold into a blind faith and believe in things that we may not necessarily have a grasp on sometimes with the moon in Pisces. So those are things I can recall. How about you, Stephen?
Well, it seems that I only have really one adult Pisces progressed moon to refer to, and in that period, I made I think of Pisces. I think my Piscean is reflected in the Neptune essence of the film and photography, and this is where I really made the first film that I ever feel like truly expressed every part of me in an authentic way, instead of trying to just make a film that was going to be a success for success sake, or like, to try to do it for other people or what I expected other people might want to see. And so, yeah, it was my opportunity to really go for it and in that way. And it really worked. It was great. And so that's the major one.
Okay. Yeah, those are some of the positive themes around Pisces: art, music, film, being behind a lens, and just like falling into the art.
In
Go ahead.
fact, it ended up being a series of short films. The first one was more about like, trying to look good so that I could be, attractive to other guys and stuff like that. And the second one, which was made in this period, was more about the spirituality. It's called Buddha Boy. I called it Buddha Boy. So like, wow, here it is.
Yeah. So those are cool. I mean, it depends on you and your natal chart, for the viewers, where the energy of this progressed moon will go. But I tell people, if you're about to enter a progressed moon in Pisces and you're into excessive drinking or smoking or doing anything, you will probably do a whole lot more of it during the progressed moon in Pisces. So getting a grip on it, if you can, before that period, so you're not binging out. So
And you may be deceiving yourself about some things.
yeah,
It's really hard with the moon in Pisces to really know what is real and what isn't real.
it's a heightened sensitivity to what you can't see right in front of you.
Mm.
So that's really cool. We're already on Pisces. Okay, so as this is your sign, do for Pisces.
I would say it's important to go for that solitude and start your meditation practice and pay attention to your dreams, because during that time you're going to be getting a lot more information from other realms of reality.
I like that.
And don't believe everything anybody tells you, and don't drink too much.
There you go.
Mhm.
And stay away from the snake oil salesman, right?
Ah,
All right. So I want to thank you all for this series. This has been superb. I think people are really going to relate to a lot of the things we said. And
Thank you, man. Thank you for pulling it together and making this happen. It's a very, very exciting conversation. I really appreciate being part of it.
awesome.